I still remember that morning, the kind of cold Denver air that cut straight through my coat and made my shoulders curl in on themselves. It should have been an ordinary day at Skyline Freight. I would make coffee, open the transportation forecasting dashboard, and check which shipping routes were at risk of falling behind. But instead, I found myself standing in front of the break room mirror, fixing my hair and taking a long, steadying breath. 6 years of work, 19 successful optimization projects, thousands of overtime hours, and more sleepless nights than I could count, all spent rescuing shipments from being returned. And I had wrapped all of it into a stack of documents nearly 200 pages thick. Today, I was going to ask for a 10% raise. A small number on paper, but for me, it felt like pushing against the weight of my entire upbringing. I was never the kind of person who demanded anything. I always believed my work should speak for itself. But after 2 years without a single salary adjustment, while my workload doubled, I knew it was time to speak up. I arrived earlier than usual, mostly so I could rehearse a few lines before my meeting with Grant Maddox, our new chief executive officer. When the investment group Ascent bought Skyline Freight, they replaced the entire leadership team and brought in Grant like some kind of restructuring hero. I never liked the man. The way he walked, talked, issued orders, it all made me feel like we were nothing but bolts in a giant machine he could replace whenever he pleased. I grabbed my file, walked down the stairs, and headed toward the 12th floor conference room. My reflection in the glass door looked like someone trying very hard not to show she was scared. When Grant's assistant signaled I could enter, I could actually hear my own heartbeat. Grant was standing by the window when I walked in, staring down at the city like he owned every inch of it. Morning light fell across his gray suit, and for a split second, he reminded me of a lone wolf surveying its territory. He turned around, did not smile, and just gave me a short nod. I understood that was all the politeness he intended to offer. I started my presentation, keeping my voice steady. I talked about the improvements I had proposed, the system failures I fixed before they became disasters, and the nights I stayed until 3 in the morning to save our biggest clients' shipments. I laid the file on the table, opened the charts showing cost reductions and productivity gains. Every number was clear. Grant flipped through a few pages. I could tell he was only doing it out of bare minimum courtesy, and when I finished with the line I had practiced all week, which I hoped to be considered for a 10% raise, he laughed. Not a polite laugh, a sharp, mocking laugh that echoed off the glass walls. 10%, he repeated, leaning back and folding his arms like I had just told him a joke. You have been here 6 years, and you think you deserve 10%. I forced myself to stay calm. I explained that my current pay was below market average, and my workload had significantly increased over the past 2 years. Grant waved a dismissive hand. Elise, you are back office. All that forecasting, algorithms, optimization software, that is support work. The real value comes from my sales team. They bring in customers, they bring in the money. You just keep them from messing up. My face burned, but I kept my tone level. Every customer retention strategy we have implemented is built on the forecasting system I created. Grant leaned forward, his eyes cold. Elise, everyone thinks they are important. But the truth is, no one here is irreplaceable. If you think you are worth more, go see what other companies are willing to pay you. Do not let me stop you. The words cut like a blade. I stood still, my heartbeat slowing like something inside me had shut down. All those years I had given Skyline, all that effort I thought would eventually be recognized, had all been an illusion. Grant leaned back, almost amused. If there is nothing else, I have an important meeting. I gathered my file, my hands trembling just slightly, and right before I stepped out, he added, so casually it felt crueler than shouting, "Oh, and Elise, if you are thinking of quitting to make a point, do not bother. People like you are always afraid of change." I did not answer. I closed the door softly, holding myself together with every ounce of strength I had left. Inside the elevator, I caught my reflection again, and for the first time in years, I did not recognize the woman staring back. Someone drained, exhausted, someone whose pride had just been stepped on. I did not know it then, but that meeting was the beginning of everything. The collapse of Skyline, the greatest victory of my life, and a version of myself I never knew I could become. And if you are still listening, maybe you have felt it too. That moment when someone looks down on you in the very place you poured your whole heart into. Tell me where you are listening from in the comments. And if you enjoy stories about rising back smarter after being underestimated, do not forget to subscribe to the next chapters. When the elevator opened on the 5th floor, where the engineering department sat quietly under harsh white neon lights, I stepped out, feeling like someone who had just been shaken out of her own life. Everything looked painfully familiar. The scattered keyboard clicks, the printer humming in the corner, the mix of cheap coffee and old paper hanging in the air. And yet inside me, it felt as if someone had picked me up from my old world and thrown me into another version of myself. I sat down at my desk, feeling every heavy beat in my chest. I opened my laptop, but the screen in front of me was nothing but strings of meaningless numbers. I could not focus. The image of Grant laughing like I was some bargain bin joke kept slamming into my head, each echo cracking like broken glass. I had worked at Skyline Freight for 6 years. 6 years is a long time. Long enough to build a career, long enough to lose your youth, long enough to believe your effort counted for something. I remembered the nights when the system crashed, and I stayed until 3 in the morning to fix it while everyone else had gone home. I remembered the day my mother was hospitalized, and I ran between the office and the emergency room just to keep a major client from pulling out. I remembered rewriting every line of faulty logic in the old forecasting system to prevent hundreds of thousands of dollars in losses. And yet, one sentence from Grant erased all of it. Back office, replaceable. I took a long breath, opened my desk drawer, and pulled out a small black notebook. This was where I kept every idea I had never dared to share, things I developed not for Skyline, but for myself. Page after page of tight handwriting, system sketches, and new forecasting models, all written in black ink during nights when my apartment was silent except for the sound of my typing. One page was marked by a paperclip. Elenops. I had named it more than 2 years ago, when Skyline's outdated system started to collapse under its own weight. I used my personal laptop, wrote thousands of lines of experimental code. At first, it was just an attempt to speed up processing. But then it exploded into something entirely different, a deep learning-based distribution, forecasting, and optimization platform capable of cutting operating costs by 30 to 50% if fully deployed. For every algorithm, every improvement, I recorded the date, the time, the device used, and a note personal project, not within Skyline's scope. I did it out of instinct. And now, that instinct might have saved me without me even realizing it. I flipped through a few more pages, reviewing the experimental modules I had run over the weekend. Most had never been implemented in the company's official system. What Skyline was using was essentially a stripped-down version I had fed into it, just to keep everything from collapsing. But Elenops was the real engine of my mind, hidden in the dark, waiting to grow big enough to step into the light. And today, when Grant laughed in my face, I knew I had just crossed that line. A light tap sounded beside me. Jenna, my closest coworker, set down a cup of hot tea on my desk. She looked at me with worry written all over her face. "Elise, are you all right?" "Everyone heard you just met with Grant." I tried to smile but failed. Jenna sighed, pulled a chair over, and sat down beside me. "I have been wanting to tell you this for a while," she said softly. "Grant is planning to cut the engineering staff. I heard from a mid-level manager that he wants to outsource most of the work to lower costs." I looked up at her, my heart dropping another beat. So not only was I denied a raise, but I might be one of the people on the list. "You are the one keeping this entire system running," Jenna said, her voice tight with anger. "If Grant thinks you do not matter, then none of us stand a chance." I glanced down at the page marked Elenops, my hand trembling slightly. It was time to face what I had been afraid of for so long. "I think I am leaving Skyline," I said, my voice barely holding together. Jenna blinked, sadness in her expression, but no surprise. I knew this day would come. I just wish it did not have to be like this. I leaned back in my chair, staring up at the bright white ceiling, letting my thoughts drift. There were 2 reasons I had hesitated to leave Skyline: my loyalty to my team and my fear of change. But now, the team was about to be sacrificed under Grant's restructuring plan, and the fear of change. Maybe it no longer had the strength to hold me. Inside my head, the pieces finally started to connect. The years of work, the sleepless nights, the times I was treated like a machine. And now, Elenops, something I built with blood and will, something that had never belonged to Skyline. A thought flashed through me, so clear it stole my breath. Elenops could be the key that opens a new door. I closed the notebook slowly, as if sealing off a chapter of my life. Then I stood up, took the notebook and my personal laptop in hand. When I stepped into the hallway, Jenna looked up, her eyes already understanding everything. "Where are you going?" she asked. I tightened my grip on the notebook to find out what I am truly worth. It was the first time in years I felt like I was walking for myself, not for Skyline, and it was the moment I knew everything was about to change forever. That night, when I returned to my small apartment on Capitol Hill, I sat down at the dining table that had gone cold hours ago and picked up my phone. In my contacts, there was a name I had saved for more than 1 year, but had never had the courage to call. Horizon X Logistics, the strongest rival Skyline had known, famous for its speed of innovation and a culture that valued engineers more than internal politics. I stared at the number for almost a full minute. Then I pressed call. The receptionist answered with crisp professionalism before quickly transferring me to Liam Harwood, the Chief Technology Officer of Horizon X. Only a few seconds later, a young, steady baritone filled the line. "Elise Carter," he said immediately, as if he had been expecting me. I stiffened. "Yes, this is me." "I have heard more about you than you think," Liam said, with a smile I could hear through the phone. Horizon X has always been curious about the person behind Skyline's sudden, unusual improvements. I fell silent. Not a single internal Skyline document had ever put my name on any accomplishment. Yet, Horizon X knew. Liam continued, "If you have time, I would like to meet you tonight. A private conversation, nothing official." Something in me pushed me to say yes. Maybe it was the hollowness left after the meeting with Grant. Maybe it was the feeling of being seen for the first time. I nodded, even though he could not see it, and we agreed to meet at a small bar on Larimer Street, a place where the lights were low and people minded their own business. When I walked in, Liam was already there, sitting in the darkest corner, his laptop closed. He looked younger than I expected, early 40s, brown hair slightly curled, a mix of calm and sharp energy in the way he carried himself. "Elise Carter." He stood and shook my hand. "Finally we meet." I sat down, loosening my scarf, my heartbeat still running too fast. "You said you know about me." Liam let out a quiet laugh. "You think Skyline suddenly increased operational performance in the past 3 years because of the new chief executive officer. I have friends in analytics. They all said the real driver was an unnamed engineer. I assumed that was you." I did not respond. He was not wrong. After a moment, I opened my notebook and slid it toward him. "This is Elenops." Liam shifted instantly into a serious posture. He straightened, opened the notebook, and read through every line. With each page, his brows drew together, not from doubt, but from astonishment. "You built this entire multi-layer forecasting system alone?" he asked. I nodded. "Using personal resources, personal equipment, nothing tied to Skyline." I nodded again, a mix of excitement and nerves tightening in my chest. Liam exhaled long. "Elise, this goes far beyond anything Skyline is using. If implemented correctly, Elenops could reshape the entire logistics market." My hands tightened together. "I know. And I also know Skyline will never give me the chance to launch it." Liam leaned on the table. "So, what do you want?" I opened my laptop and ran the Elenops simulation. Graphs, models, and forecasting curves moved smoothly across the screen. The bar outside was loud, but our corner felt unbelievably still. Liam watched every second, his eyes sharpening as the minutes passed. When the simulation ended, he closed the laptop gently. "Impressive," he said. "But I need to be sure of one thing." He gave me a real scenario, a distribution model heavily distorted due to noisy input data. He asked me to fix it right there, with only 15 minutes and my personal laptop. A test. I did not feel offended. If anything, the confidence I thought had died in me that morning rose again. I leaned over the keyboard, my fingers moving fast, the way they always did when I was saving a burning project. I isolated the signal, corrected the feature matrix, recalibrated the weight distribution, and rebuilt the entire forecasting chain in under 12 minutes. Liam stared, visibly stunned. Elise, you just did in 12 minutes what my research team has spent 2 weeks trying to finish. I sat back, breathing hard, but with a calm I had never felt inside Skyline. Liam smiled wider. I will be direct. Horizon X wants you, very much. Then he said the words that froze my entire body. 3 times your current salary. Company equity. Full authority to develop Elon Ops with your own engineering team. For a second, I thought I misheard him. He continued, and your name will be put on every project you build. No one will ever be allowed to take credit from you again. I looked down at my notebook, feeling a sting behind my eyes. If Grant heard this, he would laugh out loud. But Liam did not laugh. He said it with a seriousness that felt like a promise. My phone vibrated, a message from Jenna. Be careful, someone said Grant is asking about where you went tonight. A cold jolt ran down my spine. Grant was already suspicious, and a chief executive officer like him was capable of far more than I wanted to imagine. Liam watched my expression. Skyline is putting pressure on you. I shook my head, not directly, but I know Grant. He will not let me walk away without trouble. Liam's tone hardened. Horizon X will protect you, but you need to decide fast. We want to sign a memorandum with you within 1 week. I tightened my grip on the black notebook. I thought about 6 years of being dismissed, used, and erased from every achievement. I thought about Elon Ops and the future I could build if I dared to choose it. I looked straight into Liam's eyes. I agree in principle. Liam nodded, satisfied. Then start preparing, Elise. This decision will change your entire life. When I stepped out of the bar, the Denver night wind hit sharp and cold, but clear. I felt something ending and something beginning crossing in the space of a single breath. Tomorrow I will write my resignation letter, and this time I would walk away not out of fear, but because I finally understood how much more I was worth. The next morning, I arrived at Skyline earlier than usual, not because I wanted to work more, but because I wanted to end everything quietly. The office was still dark, with only a few rows of motion sensor lights flickering on. I opened my laptop and wrote the shortest resignation letter I could. No explanations, no blame. 6 years of work compressed into a single paragraph. I printed it, held the thin white sheet in my hand, light as a breath, but heavy as a door about to close. I walked up to the 12th floor, each step a mixture of relief and a sharp ache. The grants assistant looked surprised to see me. Elise, do you have an appointment? I shook my head. I just need to submit a document. She knocked, and Grant allowed me in. When I stepped inside, he was standing by the window, looking down at the city like all of Denver was under his command. He turned around, his expression calm. What is this about? I placed the letter in front of him. I would like to resign, effective in 2 weeks. For a brief moment, surprise flashed across his face, but it disappeared quickly. He regained his smooth, composed tone. Elise, I do not think we need to make such a sudden decision. Things may have been tense the other day, but I do appreciate your work. I did not circle around anything. I have thought it through. I am leaving Skyline. Grant's expression shifted instantly. The softness vanished, replaced by the coldness I had known too well. Elise, you understand the contract contains strict confidentiality clauses. Leaving could expose you to significant legal risks. I nodded. I know. And I have never taken any internal data outside the company. Grant gave a thin smile. Outside working hours, correct? I took the black notebook from my bag. Inside was the entire development log of Elon Ops, with dates, times, and the personal devices I used. I opened several pages for him to see. I developed all of it off hours, on my own equipment. I did not use any Skyline infrastructure. Grant hesitated for the first time, clearly not expecting that I had prepared this well. He leaned his hands on the table, his voice sharp as a blade. Elise, you know the company can view personal projects as conflicts of interest. I met his eyes. There is no clause in the contract that forbids it. and I did not use any Skyline resources to build Elinops. He did not like that answer. He hit the internal button. Call legal up here now. We need to audit all of Elise's computers and accounts. I knew exactly what he was doing, creating the pretext of suspected data theft, a classic pressure tactic used on technical staff. Legal entered, carrying a thick stack of papers. They asked me to sign a series of inventory forms, declarations, and personal device disclosures. None of it existed in the original contract. I kept my voice steady. I will only sign documents that are legally required under the original agreement. Any additional papers will go to my attorney. The sentence made Grant pull back just slightly. He had not expected me to have legal support ready. He forced his tone to be firm. The company laptop still belongs to Skyline. I have the right to seize and inspect it. I nodded right away. I do not object, but the inspection must be sealed, documented, and signed by a legal. No one touches the device after I leave unless I or my attorney is present. Legal exchanged glances. Grant glared at me, annoyed but unable to contradict the procedure. An hour later, they took my laptop and I stood at my desk, packing the last of my things: a small plant, a few books, and an old water mug. People watched quietly, no one daring to say a word. When I walked toward the elevator, Grant stepped out of his office, hands in his pockets, posture dripping with arrogance. Elise, I stopped. Do you really think you will walk out of here that easily? If I find any violation, no matter how small, I will pursue it. I am not letting this end cleanly. I turned to face him. My voice was calm, so calm it surprised even me. I have not done anything wrong, and I am not afraid of threats. Grant looked at me like he wanted to tear that certainty apart, but I turned away before he could speak again. The elevator doors closed, reflecting my face back at me. No longer the woman who had been humiliated in that morning meeting. Only resolve remained. When I stepped out of the Skyline building, the Denver wind hit icy and sharp, but clean. I gripped the bag of my belongings and walked straight to the parking lot, not looking back even once. Grant thought he had just started a war. But the truth was, the war had begun the moment he laughed in my face. And this time, I was no longer standing alone. The first day at Horizon X began with a feeling both strange and weightlessly relieving. Their building was not as flashy as Skyline, but there was something I sensed the moment I stepped inside, a positive energy. People walked quickly, spoke softly, focused, but never tense. Everyone greeted me with real smiles, not the mechanical, polite gestures I had grown used to. Liam was waiting in the lobby, hands in his pockets, his face brightening when he saw me. Welcome to Horizon X, Elise. Ready? I nodded. It had been a long time since I genuinely looked forward to anything. We headed straight to the engineering floor, the heart of their operations. Each room had digital boards showing real-time shipment status. Liam led me into a small meeting room, where 5 people were already seated. This is your new team, Liam said. All strong engineers, but each with their own style. I looked around. Ava, data analysis, sharp eyes full of fire. Brooks, system security, calm and controlled. Maya, algorithm optimization, focused. Ethan, DevOps, quiet and thoughtful. And finally, Jordan, the only one with his arms crossed, not smiling, openly skeptical. Liam leaned in. I will say it for him. Jordan wants to know if you are actually as good as your reputation says. Jordan did not look away. That is right. We have heard a lot about you, but here we do not trust stories. We trust results. His tone was not rude, but not friendly either. I knew that feeling too well. 6 years at Skyline had been a long chain of proving myself to people who never valued technical work. Good, I said. Then let us start with the results. Liam smiled, pleased I did not flinch. You will have a small challenge. There is a persistent bug that the team has spent 2 weeks on without finding the root cause. If you can resolve it within 24 hours, I believe everyone will feel confident that we bet on the right person. Jordan crossed his arms tighter, almost as a dare. I asked for the system logs immediately. They handed me a laptop with the data open. The issue was in the route optimization module, exactly the area I knew best. But the broken code did not look like a logic flaw. It looked like corrupted input, a mismatch in the data sync between 2 servers. I sat down and focused completely. They watched me, but I felt no pressure. This was my world. Algorithms, data chains, predictive models. After an hour and a half, I found the cause. An old automated script that had not been updated was pulling data from a former partner using a new format, causing cascading failures. I fixed the script, added a filter, and reran the simulation. When the system returned stable results, I finally looked up. It is done. Jordan stood, walked over, and examined the screen. A minute passed. He turned back to me, and his eyes were no longer cold. Good, he said. I admit that. He held out his hand. Welcome to the team. I shook his hand, feeling a door open inside me. At that same moment, at Skyline, everything was going in the opposite direction. Jenna texted me while I was eating lunch at Horizon X. Elise, the system is breaking nonstop. No one knows why. Grant is blaming engineering. Emergency meeting. I typed back. Do you guys have enough people to handle it? She replied. No. Grant cut 7 more people this morning. I frowned. This was what I had feared for years. Skyline depended on a system they never understood, and without the person who had quietly patched its hidden flaws, it was collapsing. Without Elise, they could not handle the issues she had spent years fixing alone. I closed my phone, feeling a small ache, but no regret. Someone once said, never save a place that refuses to save itself. Grant believed Skyline was untouchable, and now he was choking on the consequences. In the afternoon, Liam brought me into the main conference room. Elise, it is time to begin the Elin Ops trial. I connected my personal laptop and opened the simulation. The projections displayed on the wall were far more accurate than anything Horizon X currently used. The team leaned in instantly. The graphs, the real-time models, everything showed performance miles ahead. Jordan scanned the parameters. Does this run on behavioral forecasting or route-based forecasting? Both, I answered, plus an adaptive layer that changes with hourly fluctuations. The room went silent for a few seconds, the kind of silence when people realize they are looking at something truly groundbreaking. Liam nodded. We deploy the trial version within 4 days. I tightened my hands. Elin Ops is finally stepping into the real world, no longer trapped in my black notebook or my personal laptop. 1 week passed like a storm. We ran trials on 3 independent transport routes. Elin Ops not only worked, it exceeded every expectation. Delivery time dropped nearly 40%, fuel costs decreased dramatically, and error rates fell to almost 0. While I was compiling the data, Liam walked in with a wide, excited smile. Elise, the report is in. I opened the file. The green numbers covered more than 80% of the screen. My heart beat faster as I read line after line. Elin Ops surpassed everyone's expectations. And this is only the pilot phase. Once we scale it, Horizon X will redefine the entire logistics landscape. I leaned back in my chair, feeling like I had finally stepped out of a 6-year shadow. I looked out the glass wall. No mocking laughter, no crushing meetings, no one calling me back. I was Elise Carter, and Elin Ops was mine. The test results of Elin Ops spread through Horizon X like a fast-moving wind. Within 2 weeks, the system had been deployed across 10 major distribution routes in the company. With every updated report, I could feel the excitement rising across the engineering floor. Elin Ops reduced delivery times by more than 35%, cut fuel and labor costs almost in half, and wiped out long-standing errors that had haunted the company for years. The forecasting accuracy reached numbers Horizon X had only seen in simulated reports. Liam could barely contain his pride. Elise, I think we are standing at the moment that changes this entire industry. I did not respond immediately. A part of me still was not used to being recognized. But looking at the dashboard glowing with bright green indicators, I knew that this time my work would not be buried or claimed by someone else. While Horizon X was rising like a storm front, Skyline was slipping straight into the abyss. The first major clients left only 1 week after Elin Ops went live. Jenna told me. They lost the North Rock retail account. Grant exploded in the meeting room. 2 days later, Ridgeway Foods canceled its contract. Then came Gibraltar Supply Chain, a client that once brought in nearly 1/4 of Skyline's annual revenue. Skyline could not uphold a single commitment without the system they never understood. Grant tried to blame the engineering team, but the layoffs only made everything worse. People were forced to do triple the work, errors piled on top of errors, and customers reached their breaking point. Jenna texted me close to midnight. Elise, we cannot handle this anymore. Everything is falling apart. The old system feels like it is about to explode. I stared at my phone for a long moment. There was a time when messages like that would have sent me running back to the office to patch the system, but now all I felt was a quiet sadness. That place was no longer mine. Skyline's collapse made Grant even more desperate. He did what everyone had expected. He hired a high-security engineering team to investigate Elanops. Their job was to identify the system and search for any similarity, even the smallest, to Skyline's old software, hoping to sue me. Horizon X knew before I did. One afternoon, Liam stepped into my office, his expression dark. Elise, they are trying to break into our system. They cannot get in, but their goal is to dig for traces, not to sabotage. I knew Grant would not give up easily, but I had not expected him to become this reckless. 2 days later, Horizon X reported something strange. Skyline specialists had found an old file in their mail server, a file I had nearly forgotten. It was an email I had sent 3 years earlier to the previous leadership saying, I propose transferring ownership of the 2 forecasting modules I developed after hours, if the company wishes to integrate them into the system. The acquisition process and compensation can be discussed. Grant had not replied directly at the time. Instead, he CC'd the legal team with one short note. No need for procedure. Use it if useful. Everything else can wait. Those 4 words, everything else can wait, became the evidence that destroyed his entire case. Skyline's engineers thought they had found the thing that would bring me down, but instead they uncovered the proof that I had acted correctly, while Grant had ignored legal procedures for years. Grant still chose to sue. Perhaps he had lost too much to turn back. The lawsuit arrived at Horizon X on a Monday morning. Liam brought it to my office, placing it on the desk without a sound. Read it. But do not worry. We have been preparing since the day you arrived. I opened the document. Skyline accused me of misappropriating intellectual property and causing severe revenue damage. I read to the last line and exhaled slowly. They really thought I would be afraid of cheap legal threats. The trial moved faster than anyone expected. Our lawyers presented the Elanops development log, the full records of my personal devices, and finally, the 3-year-old email proving Skyline had refused to follow legal acquisition procedures. When the email appeared on the screen, Grant went pale. The panel needed only 10 minutes to dismiss all accusations and add that Skyline had shown a lack of seriousness in intellectual property management and attempted to use the law to intimidate a former employee. The case collapsed in the most literal sense. Grant said nothing as he left the courtroom. News outlets picked up the story instantly. One major headline read, Skyline Freight loses lawsuit against former engineer, leadership at fault. From that moment on, Skyline could barely stand. The board questioned Grant daily. More than 60% of clients were gone. The stock plummeted. Internal rumors spread. Grant might be forced out any day now. Horizon X, meanwhile, was surging forward, not just because of Elanops, but because people now knew me, the person who helped push the company ahead during the industry's toughest competition. My colleagues proudly talked about my system. Internal reports called me the new strategic pillar. For the first time in my life, I walked into a company and saw my own face on the opening slide of a full company meeting. Before switching to the next slide, Liam said, Elise Carter has changed the future of Horizon X. I sat still, feeling a warm current run down my spine. Not because of glory, but because, for once, I truly belonged somewhere. Elanops was no longer a forgotten draft buried in my old laptop. It had become a flagship product, the reason Horizon X was being called the next-generation leader in logistics technology. I, once labeled a back-office employee who brought no value, in Grant's words, had become the symbol of Horizon X's success. And this was only the beginning. A week after the lawsuit was dismissed, Liam sent me an independent report that the entire logistics industry was buzzing about. It was a comprehensive analysis of Skyline Freight's collapse after 6 months of crisis. The very first page made my throat tighten. The primary cause was not the loss of key personnel, but poor leadership, lack of succession planning, reckless executive decisions, and a culture of denying risk. I read every line with the sinking feeling of watching a slow motion film of the years I had lived through, ignored warnings, rejected upgrade requests, and decisions that pushed the system past its limits. The report stated clearly that Elanops was only a catalyst for comparison, not the cause of Skyline's downfall. Something twisted in my chest. I never wanted to be the reason dozens of people suffered, even if the report showed the truth was the opposite. That afternoon, as I stepped out of the building, I heard someone call from behind. Elise, I turned. A man stood in the slanted afternoon light, hair salt and pepper, shoulders slightly hunched, but the eyes were unmistakable. Wilson. I walked quickly toward him. Are you all right? He gave a tired smile. All right is a luxury, Elise, but I am surviving. I opened my mouth, but he continued. At Skyline, many people think you are the reason they were let go. Not because they hate you, but because leadership believed that if they kept you, the system would stay alive, and the rest of us could be replaced by anyone. My chest dropped a beat. I never wanted. I know, Wilson said firmly. No one blames you. People are just hurting because they worked their whole lives only to be treated like they never mattered. Grant thought you were the only star worth saving. That was the mistake that killed the company. He placed a hand on my shoulder. But the consequences are still real. A lot of people are struggling, Elise. He walked away, leaving behind a long, heavy chain of thoughts I could not shake. I had saved myself, saved the system I built, but the people I once worked beside, there was no one to save them. At Horizon X, Elanops continued to exceed every expectation. 3 major clients switched over within 1 month. The board expanded my authority and granted additional budget to grow the engineering team. Meanwhile, Horizon X HR sent me a long list of new applicants. I recognized at least 10 names from Skyline, engineers, route coordinators, shift managers, and people who had worked with me through sleepless nights. Jordan placed the stack on my desk. Most of these are from Skyline. What do you want to do? I ran my fingers over the papers, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. They were not wrong. They had simply been in the wrong place, under the wrong leadership. But could I help all of them? As Horizon X expanded rapidly, Skyline spiraled uncontrollably. Jenna told me Grant had barely shown up in the office for an entire week. The board was holding meeting after meeting to discuss replacing him. Elise, they say Grant might be gone soon, Jenna texted. I replied with a single line. I hope everyone is okay. But I knew they were not. Many were already unemployed or waiting for their turn. One late night, while I was reviewing the latest Elanops report, Liam walked in. You look exhausted. What is going on? I stared out at the Denver skyline, lights bleeding into the night. Then I finally said what had been lodged in my chest for days. I feel guilty. A lot of people lost their jobs, and even though the report says it was not because of me, I still feel connected to it. Liam pulled up a chair, his voice steady. Elise, you did not destroy Skyline. Granted, you left a place that did not respect you. Horizon X. Thriving because of you is not a sin. I pressed my lips together. Logic understood. My heart did not. After a long pause, I said softly, but what if I can help the people there, not Grant, but the ones who deserve a second chance? Liam looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. If you believe there is something right you can do, then do it. You have influence here now. Propose it. His words sparked the idea that had been simmering quietly inside me for weeks. That night, I opened my laptop and began to write. Not technical documents, not system reports, but my first proposal for a support program for the displaced Skyline staff. I gave it a name. Restart Program, a second chance for those who should never have been left behind. In the proposal, I outlined 3 goals. Priority hiring for capable former Skyline employees. Reskilling, training for those who wanted to shift roles. A referral network among logistics companies across Denver. I read it once before hitting save. caught between Horizon X rise and Skyline's collapse. It was the first time I felt I could build a bridge instead of standing on one shore, watching the other burn. When I closed the laptop, I knew one thing clearly. I had chosen my path. I arrived at Horizon X earlier than usual that morning. Denver was overcast, a stretch of gray clouds pressing down on the sky, making the air feel heavier than it should. As I turned into the parking lot, I noticed a black luxury SUV already parked there. The tinted window caught a dull glint of light, but I still recognized the silhouette inside. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but no. The moment I closed my car door, the man stepped out. Grant Maddox. I froze for a second. Grant had always appeared in front of me with the confidence and arrogance of a newly crowned chief executive officer, a man convinced the world would bend for him. But today, he looked nothing like that. His face was gaunt, his stubble uneven, his expensive suit wrinkled as if he had slept in it, and yet, his eyes still clung to that familiar arrogance. His voice was hoarse, but a hint of that cold edge remained. Elise, we need to talk. I did not want a scene in Horizon X parking lot, but I could not pretend I had not seen him. I folded my arms, keeping my distance. I thought things between us ended the moment the court dismissed your case. Grant glanced around, as if afraid someone might see him here. This is not a safe place to talk. Let us go to the rooftop. I just need 5 minutes. I exhaled quietly. I was not afraid of him anymore. I was not afraid of anything tied to Skyline anymore. I stepped into the elevator first. Grant followed, silent enough that I could hear the ragged edge of his breathing. When the doors opened onto the rooftop, the cold wind struck both of us sharply. Grant stood with his back to the city, staring toward the direction where Skyline once held its headquarters. "We are going bankrupt," he said the moment I walked up. His voice was a mixture of bitterness and quiet desperation. "The board has voted. If we cannot turn things around in 3 months, Skyline will be dissolved." I said nothing. Grant turned to face me, his eyes bloodshot. "Elise, you have to come back and help me." I almost laughed, softly, disbelieving. "Say that again." He stepped closer. "I need you as a consultant, not an employee. I will pay you 4 times what Horizon X pays. You will have full authority over the old system. Just keep Skyline from dying completely." I looked him straight in the eyes, my voice steadier than I expected. "Grant, you do not need me. You need someone to carry the blame for you. You want a name to point to when Skyline cannot get back up. Is that it?" His face twitched, the truth hitting him harder than he wanted to admit. He turned away, jaw tight. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller, thinning under the weight of everything he had lost. I was wrong. I froze. I had never thought I would hear those words from Grant. He continued, voice trembling, as if he were swallowing a whole mountain of pride. "I should not have treated you that way. I should not have laughed at you. I should not have dismissed what you built. I was too confident that I could never be wrong." His honesty startled me, but I would not let it soften me. "Your mistake was not just treating me badly. It was leading an entire workforce into ruin, crushing morale and treating people like ammunition to burn through." Grant winced, trying to cling to whatever authority he still believed he had. "You do not understand the pressure of leadership. When you are in charge, emotions have to be sacrificed. Toughness is sometimes necessary." I looked at him, and for the first time, he did not look powerful at all. "Grant, toughness is not a strategy. Cruelty is not leadership. And disrespect is definitely not intelligence." He fell silent. The wind swept across the rooftop, leaving us in a hollow quiet. I drew in a breath before delivering the final cut. What killed Skyline was not me. It was not Elanops. It was not the employees leaving. What killed Skyline was leadership that never listened to the people who mattered. Grant lowered his head. I thought I would feel triumphant, but I did not. All I saw was a man standing in the wreckage he had created, and it was too vast for him to outrun. A few seconds later, he looked back up. "If you will not help me, then at least help my employees. The ones left will face mass layoffs. They do not deserve this. Those people worked for the company, not for me." His voice broke. It was the first time I had ever seen Grant vulnerable. I stared at him for a long moment. Suddenly, images flooded my mind. Wilson under the afternoon sun, Jenna texting at midnight, the old team quietly drowning under decisions they never made. I could not save Skyline, but I could save them. I nodded. I will not come back. But I will expand the support program for Skyline staff, the ones who have the skill, the heart, the dedication. I will make sure they have a chance. Grant closed his eyes, relief washing over him like he had just stepped back from a cliff. Thank you, he whispered. I stepped into the elevator, and just before the doors closed, I told him one last thing. Grant, sometimes justice is not about punishment. It is about finally learning the lesson you should have learned long ago. The doors slid shut, leaving Grant standing on the rooftop, small against the gray sky. Back in my office, I pulled up the restart proposal I had written the night before. This time I added one final line. Not for the past, but for the future of those who deserve one. I sent the proposal to Liam. At that moment, standing on the edge between justice and compassion, I knew exactly which direction I needed to walk. A week after I submitted the restart proposal, Horizon X called an emergency meeting with the entire leadership team. Liam stood at the head of the table, his hand resting on the color printout of the document I had presented the day before. When he looked at me with that quiet, unmistakable respect, I knew the program was going to be approved. That afternoon, Horizon X officially announced Restart, a recruitment and retraining program created specifically for employees who had lost their jobs at Skyline. The announcement went live on the company website, on LinkedIn, and business outlets picked it up almost immediately. A wave of excitement spread through the office. The first application emails arrived within minutes. 2 days later, we had nearly 200 submissions. I spent the entire evening reviewing every single one. So many familiar names. People who once sat beside me during lunch breaks, who called me during night shifts to ask about system failures, who survived impossible peak seasons with me. None of them deserved to be swept away by the chaos caused by Grant's decisions. The following week blurred into a pace I had never experienced. The HR team worked nonstop, hosting group interviews, rapid evaluations, and skill checks. I joined almost every interview, not because I had to, but because I felt I owed them something. By the end of the 9th day, we had hired more than half. Some burst into tears right there at the interview table when they heard the words, "We are excited to welcome you to Horizon X." One of them was Wilson, who had managed Skyline's warehouse operations for 20 years. He shook my hand so tightly when he walked into the new office. "Elise, I do not know how to thank you. You gave us an opportunity. Skyline never did." I smiled. "It is not me. It is your resilience." But when he walked away, I knew that was not the whole truth. If I had stayed silent, if I had kept enduring, if I had accepted being undervalued, none of them would be here today. A month later, Horizon X held a major event to celebrate the nationwide rollout of Elin Ops. I stood on a small stage, facing a room full of people who, just a year ago, had been my former colleagues. The light shone bright on me. Below the stage, Liam looked up, proud. The host read my name with my new title, Innovator of the Year. As I stepped forward to accept the award, the applause rose like a wave. The glass plaque reflected a version of myself I never imagined I could become. Someone who walked away, who defended her worth, who built something greater than herself. After the ceremony, as I was speaking with the new team, a young woman approached me. She looked about 22, her badge reading Tessa, a new member of the development team. "Elise, can I ask you something?" I nodded. "How did you know when it was time to stand up for yourself?" I am afraid of looking demanding or ungrateful. I looked at her and saw myself from years ago, a woman who believed silence was loyalty and endurance was virtue. I spoke slowly. "You know it is time to stand up when you realize you are being valued less than your worth, when you constantly have to prove what should already be obvious, when fear replaces trust every time you show up to work, and especially when you feel yourself fading into a job you built with your own hands." She lowered her head, absorbing every word. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "And remember this, Tessa, someone with real value never needs permission to be respected." She thanked me and walked away, leaving me with a strange ache, a mixture of pride and grief for the version of myself who once stayed silent for too long. A few days later, I returned to my office to find a cream-colored envelope on my desk with no name on it. I opened it, Inside was a handwritten letter, something almost no one used anymore. Elise, I wish I had seen your worth sooner. Congratulations on everything you have achieved. Grant. I read the short message several times. No bitterness, no excuses, no dramatics, just a late admission of truth. I placed the letter in my drawer, not to keep it as a memory, but to put away a chapter that had ended. I did not need to forgive or forget. I only needed to let go. That night, after everyone had left, I stepped onto the 16th floor balcony. Denver stretched out before me, glittering like an ocean of light. The night wind carried the scent of melting snow and something else, something that felt like new hope. I leaned against the railing, taking it all in. 6 years ago, I stood inside a Skyline elevator, feeling so small I thought I might disappear. 6 years of work, sacrifice, and all I got was a mocking laugh. But if I could tell that version of myself one thing, I would say this. The best decision you ever made was not leaving Skyline. It was believing you deserved better. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. The night sky opened wide in front of me like a limitless door. I had finally stepped out of the shadow of being underestimated, and into the light I created myself. I smiled, knowing my journey was far from over. It had only just begun.